Well, welcome everybody. I'm Freeman Marvin, Innovative Decisions Inc., and our topic today is voting and other ways to kind of get that group, the cats and dogs, get them herded down into a conclusion at the end of the session. So we're going to spend an hour, 15 minutes going through that, and we'll do some fun activities along the way. So this is my favorite quote, and I as a decision analyst, it's very applicable. I don't know who Bosco Perkey was, but it's a great name. So what is a group process? That's what we'll start. You got all these ugly people, all different shapes and sizes, and there's no homogeneity. You got generals, you got privates, you got men, women, you got all kinds of weird stuff going on. And your job as the analyst is to kind of get them to pool all of their resources, all their knowledge, all their experience, all their information, and herd them towards the finish line so that you can come as a group to make a recommendation or solve a problem or make a decision as a group. So a good group process is going to involve not only the convergent thinking, which is what we're here today to talk about, but you got to precede that with divergent thinking. Okay, you've got to reach out into all those brains and get all the good stuff they've got in their heads. Get it out, make it explicit, share it, refine it, talk about it. Dig deep, and then through that facilitated process, you're going to be bringing it together and coming to a group action. So very simple process. The problem is what? Everybody heard of groupthink before? Okay, so it's when you don't do that divergence as much as you should. So the boss says, well, I think we should do this. And everybody else says, what do they say? Sure, sounds good to me, boss, right? Or the bully in the crowd, the one who talks the loudest, the one who's always, leaning forward on the desk, this is what we should do, right, guys, right? And I don't know if Marines are good at that or not, but that's what happens. So we get too rapid convergence. Bad actions come from groupthink. And we can talk about Abilene paradox another time, another flavor. This happens sometimes in university departments, families, lots of situations where there's no pressure to conform. There's no pressure to do anything. It's just, oh, let's talk some more. Kids keep talking. That's great. When you keep talking, nothing happens. Let's have another meeting. Oh, it was a great hour. Let's meet again next week. Okay, that's just nothing more than a debating society. So what makes group process hard is this, trying to get them to diverge adequately, cover the ground, and then switch turn that dial, turn that switch, and then bring it to conversion so that they can act on what they decide. And it's very dependent on the group you have. It's dependent on the amount of time you have. It's dependent on the problem that you're working on, right? So this is the key, and this is what you got to work on. It's an art as much as a science. Okay. So we'll talk today about the convergent part, which is really the fun part. I think it's the fun part. It's the part that didn't talked about that much. Lots of discussion about divergent thinking. That's fun. We don't have to choose anything. Everybody's, let 1,000 flowers bloom. Everybody's got an idea. Oh, that's great. Let's sing Kumbaya. Let's all join hands. Everybody's equal. Everybody's got ideas. Oh, that's great. Let's put that up on the wall. It's a great idea. The problem comes the other end, when now we got to say, your idea was not that good. We don't like it. And your idea, your idea was pretty good, but we're going to change it to combine it with somebody else's idea. You okay with that? So now we got to make some choices. We got to be tough, and we've got to, it's like, deciding you only got enough money to send one kid to college. Okay, what are you going to do? Yeah. You're going to borrow, right? So the inclination of a group is not to converge. It's hard. It's nasty. You have to make a choice. Nobody likes to do that. So the idea with the pulsing is to break your problems up into chunks. Don't have them solve world hunger, and in one fell swoop. Do pulses. Do some divergent thinking on a part of the problem. Converge on that. Diverge on something else. Converge on that. And that way your group and your decision makers or your experts, they'll get used to doing that. They'll learn how to do it. They'll learn how to work as a group together, and they'll get better at it as they go along. So this pulsing action is a very nice metaphor. And see how you can break your problem up into pieces so that people aren't intimidated by it, and they get into a pattern and they learn from each other. Okay. So how do we do that convergent phase? Well, here's an example. You ready? That's a good way. We want a picnic. No, we want a game night. Oh, okay. Well, how about a cruise? Okay, these are great ideas. But they're trying to choose, and when they come to choosing, it's really, really hard to do. Okay, so we call this the sea of indecision. When they get to that groan zone, all these ideas, and they don't know what to do next, right? Okay, so the next day, they went with the cruise. Imagine that. Woohoo! That's our boss, Dr. Beatty. I don't think he's going to want to pay for a cruise. No, too bad. All right. Okay, well, see, that was the best idea, wasn't it? Okay, what do we do? So everybody's back to the drawing board here, I guess. But I would say that if you facilitated this group and used good convergence techniques, you could figure out how to help them. Okay, so good convergence techniques, very simple as divergent, convergent. First you ought to define what you're assessing, what you're trying to accomplish, so that everybody in the group knows, hey, this is what we're assessing. You make the assessment, and then you share them, talk about them, massage them, combine them, categorize them, however you want to do it. And then you take some time to revise your assessment, okay? It's a good opportunity. Why? I made an assessment. Well, gee, I learned something through that discussion. I want to revise my assessment. I was wrong. I learned something. Gee, we don't like learning in this group. We don't want learning. We want everybody to be right the first time, right? No, you want people to learn from each other. That's what it's all about. It's not just sharing to hold hands. It's sharing to actually listen to the other person and hear what they're saying. The last step, though, when you got a group, is somehow you've got to combine all this stuff into, either some sort of a single answer or some distribution or something so that you can make a recommendation. It's not often the right thing to go to the boss and say, we looked at all the options and they're all pretty good, Everybody wanted one. Okay, we want to come to convergence so that we can say, as a group, we think this is what we ought to do, or we think this is the assessment. Okay, so very simple. You always have these people. They're clock watchers. Like, okay, guys, this is fun, but I got I got someplace I got to be. I got to pick my kid up from daycare. Can we just vote and get on with it? Okay, so what do you do? Yeah, and everybody says, yeah. What about voting? Let's just do it. Okay, great. And Dr. Beatty says, well, I think I do have a PhD, and I'm from Stanford, no less, and I've heard about this voting thing. Isn't it? Can't you just do that and whoever wins? That sounds pretty good to me. Okay, let's do it. Ready? All right, so this is the 20 employees all weighed in on the Dr. Beatty changed the cruise to a dinner cruise. Okay, well, so he accepted that if we went on the Potomac and didn't try to go to Hawaii. Okay, so everybody weighed in. They voted. All right. Okay, so the question for us is, where should we hold the party? Everybody's been trying to figure this out. What's a fair way to vote and to choose? Okay, unfortunately, anybody heard of Arrow's impossibility theorem? No, okay, we're going to learn about that today. This guy, Ken Arrow, who's still alive and kicking, doing his thing, he proved that you can't have a fair voting system. Voting is not fair. That's kind of shocking. Don't we vote for the president? And you're telling me it's not fair? That's kind of paradigm shattering. Why the heck do we do it? It's not fair. But he actually burst everybody's bubble. There was a whole industry of social scientists looking at social choice theories and everything, and he turned everything upside down, turned it on its ear. Okay? So the problem is that there's several different criteria for what a fair vote would be that are generally accepted, and that you can't develop a voting system that satisfies all the criteria simultaneously. And the proof was his PhD dissertation. So, like a lot of these guys, they do it when they get their PhD, and then it's all downhill after that, right? Yeah. But it's so any voting system is subjective because there's no absolutely fair system. And then in my mind, it's pretty short leap from subjective to arbitrary, right? I mean, who gets to choose? Who decides how to decide? The king, right? So there's a lot of appeal to that dictator thing, right? I'm the boss. I'm making the rules. Why? Because there's no other way to do it. So the best we can hope to do is work together, help each other out, try to understand what we're doing, yeah, and try to make decisions as a group, okay? Because voting is inherently not fair. Okay. Now we can use voting techniques. That's good too. But this is the argument for consensus building, okay? And if your boss says, well, we don't want to do that fluffy kumbaya stuff, you say, well, boss, did you realize that if we just vote, it's not going to be fair? We're not going to get the best answer that way. We'll get an answer, but it won't be the best. Okay, so I think the reason Ken went downhill after that is because once you win the Nobel Prize, what else is there to do? I have won the Nobel Prize. What more do you want from me? So anyway, he's a great guy. Still hanging around decision analysis conferences. But he hadn't really written anything since then. Okay, so what are the fairness criteria?